Hello, everybody. Welcome to Here's Why with Kevin Ortega-Rojas. My name is Kevin Ortega-Rojas, and I'm your host. Here's Why is a show that I started in 2023. And here I cover politics, news, and sometimes pop culture. But this is not the same as breaking news, which I do on Instagram every day. So you'll have heard some of these stories, but this show gives us a chance to dive deeper into them with some friends. Trump's first week in office was a mess. Here's why. The guardrails are off. Trump has filled his cabinet and his administration with loyalists who seem hellbent on defending every indefensible thing that he does, from trying to alter the Constitution, releasing criminals from prison, ending protections for federal contractors, promising to invade our allies, ending DEI initiatives, targeting trans people, bullying foreign leaders, and now the sixth person in line to the presidency is an alcoholic Fox News host with multiple sexual assault allegations against him. Republicans want to give Donald Trump a third term in office and even add his face to Mount Rushmore. Yes, those are all things that really happened. It's been a lot. So let's go ahead and welcome our guests. I'm going to bring on to the stage some friends who are here to join us. Hello. How is everyone? So, we are missing one person, but she will be here soon. This week, I am joined by political content creator and clapback king, Kenny Walden, educator, creator, and podcaster, Marquise Davon, and soon, hopefully, we'll be joined by lawyer, comedian, activist, and political content creator, Elizabeth Booker-Houston. Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
As good as we can possibly be. Child, it's been a shit show this last week, and we're only 7 days into this administration. It's going to be a long 4 years. Hopefully, we can do something in 2 to kind of alleviate some of the problems that we're facing.
It has been a lot. It has been a lot.
That part. Yeah, I share a lot of the same sentiments. It's just now Philly's just outside because the Eagles are now going to the Super Bowl. So people are acting up in the streets. So so there's some light of the day.
Moments of joy. Moments of joy. For those of you who are watching on Instagram, you guys can come over to YouTube to come and watch. The link is in my story. I'll probably end the Instagram version of this live in about 15 minutes so that you guys can come over to YouTube. So come and join us on YouTube. I would really, really appreciate it. For those of you who are on YouTube, please make sure to press like on this video. It really helps. Leave a comment. I will try my best to read them. Bear with me. I do not go live. I've never done a YouTube live. So we're going to try to make this work as best we can. Elizabeth hopefully will be here soon, but we're just going to jump right in. Okay. So as you guys know, as I said, Donald Trump is back in office. My first question for you guys is, what does this first week, oh, here she is. You know, hold on. Got to bring her to the stage. Oh, wow. Hello.
What's good, sis?
What's up? Sorry, y'all. The link went to my spam. I blame this administration. So I blame everything right now.
It's a good start.
Thanks, Trump. No, thank you for joining us. I already introduced you, but for those of you who may have missed it, this is lawyer, comedian, activist, and political content creator Elizabeth Booker-Houston. Is it Houston, like the street in New York, or Houston?
It's Houston, like Beyonce's hometown.
I didn't want to get in trouble, and I was gonna ask you, but you know.
No, it's totally fine. Yeah, because I live on the East Coast now, but yeah, very much a Southern Houston, not an East Coast Houston.
All right, so my first question for the panel, and whoever wants to can jump in first. How does this first week of Trump's administration compare to Trump's first week 8 years ago? Are there any feelings that stick out?
I'll just say this. He wasn't as organized as he is at this moment because he literally had an organization that built his entire platform that pretty much did the work for him and laid down this groundwork for him to be able to do what he's doing. That's having everybody in a chaotic mess, right? Because the whole goal is to exhaust us. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I'm exhausted. A nigga is tired. The bags are real. Okay. I'm tired.
Yeah.
Facts. Even just like jump off that too. I was in college when he was first elected. So like even that for me, I was like, oh, I'm a junior in college. And he had to navigate a little bit more trying to figure out the system that he was entering into because he was a lot newer to it. Whereas it feels like 8 years later, he's like, oh, I don't got to respect this institution. I can do whatever I want right now. And so he gets to move a little bit more audaciously this time, which I'm a little bit more particularly dangerous in this moment.
I hear that. Elizabeth, any thoughts?
This time 8 years ago, I was getting ready to come work for him. So I had applied to the Presidential Management Fellows Program. I was a third-year law student, and I just knew Hillary Clinton was going to win. I was like, yep, I'm going to be working. I'm going to get this fellowship. I'm going to go to D.C. I'm going to be working under President Hillary Clinton. It's going to be great. And then she didn't win, and I didn't have any absences, so I had to go to class the next day like a zombie. And then I got the letter saying that I had been selected for the fellowship like a couple weeks before the inauguration. And so I was just sitting there like, oh Lord.
Oh look,
what
someone in the
hell am I
comments.
about to do?
Someone in the comments said they were almost there with you.
So I'm guessing they decided to drop out of that. And I agree with what Kenny said. It was like they were disorganized. They didn't know what was going on. I remember coming into the White House, which it's funny to me that the first time I was invited to the White House was by that man. He will not invite me back now. And I don't want to go. But the first time I went, I remember them pulling us in a room, all the fellows, and like one of his advisors was just all flustered. And he was just like, well, you guys know more about this than we do. Ha 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 ha. And I'm like, okay. But now they came ready. They came ready with these executive orders. Now, are they still goofy? There's still a lot of discord there. I think there's still some weak spots, but I'm sure we're going to get into this discussion later, but it's going to be about whether the Democrats are actually going to step up and go ahead and hone in on their Achilles heel over and over and over again and actually do what needs to be done. And that's my concern.
Yeah. So, my next question is, and this is something that I have been, struggling with a lot of friends, as you guys know, I post about the news all day long, and it has now become my job. And I told my friends that I was kind of having some mixed feelings about it because I wonder, are we fear-mongering? Should we cover everything that Trump does in great detail, or should we stay focused on a particular set of issues, or do we not pay attention to some things and just let it go? Trump and his allies have a strategy where they tend to flood the airwaves with chaos and confusion and headlines to make Americans feel dizzy so that they can't keep up, which is why I feel like we should be talking about everything. But what do you think?
I can tell you, I jumped right into immediately videos saying chaos and confusion is what they do. Like, do not waste your time. The number of times I've had to tell people, I'm like, yes, the hiring freeze. He did that last time. Yes, the communications blackout. They have done this before with HHS. I get it. I understand people are freaking out about the morbidity and mortality report. I also want people to remember that the timing of this report, if I recall correctly, it would have been put out with the last communications pause either. It just so happened that the timing was different, right? I teach food and drug law to law students. I was telling them you can still go on the FDA website. They're still posting all the recalls, all the safety issues, all of that is still happening. So I do feel like, especially with legacy media, I was really irritated in the way that they were presenting this in a very fear-mongering way, because that is distracting from the big thing, which in my opinion is the attack on trans people, which is tied into the deportations.
Yep.
Yeah. Or Marquise?
There you go. I think in the same boat. I think it's a both and situation. We do definitely need to continue to post. I think just making sure that we contextualize some things. I think that's what happens a lot of the time is like we're immediately quick to see the headlines, but like I'm a English teacher. And so like, even on my end, I'm just like, no, how are we actually engaging with different pieces of media and making sure that you're like, hey, what's actually happening versus the emotional response that's happening, right? And so I think like leading in with that, it's important to keep both because humanity is within the emotions that people are feeling. So their feelings are super valid. I think for us, sometimes as media practitioners, our job is to not only give information, but also lead with potential hope and whatever that looks like in whoever's capacity. So I think finding that balance of hope and being educational or informational is gonna have that moment. So I try to find like different moments of Black joy just to post that for people and be like, nah, there's some real stuff happening too. So also don't let your foot off their necks either.
I mean, I agree with that sentiment. I'm not one of those type of people who like to focus on the doom and gloom thing. Even when it came to the election stuff, I didn't focus on, focusing on Project 2025 and the impending doom that is now, but actually focusing on things that can actually help. Right now, I'm just telling people what they need to do as far as reaching out to third-party nonprofit organizations that are ready to lawyer up. I mean, ready to actually take the fight to Republicans, because a lot of these things are going to be challenged in court. A lot of things he's doing right now is going to have some legal action. And that's the hope that we have right now is what are we going to do? What can we do that's actionable? And what money can we actually fund to people who are ready to fight for the American people?
Right. I've, felt just really conflicted, I think, because there's a saying in journalism, if it bleeds, it leads. And a lot of these negative stories are benefiting people. And I have to be honest about that. Even myself, like my page has grown 10,000 followers since Trump's inauguration, because people are looking for the information, which I believe I act with integrity. So I'm not trying to like cause chaos and confusion, but it does feel like sometimes I'm like, should I report this? Or is this that I just posted something an hour ago? Like, it's just too much, but that's how fast he moves. Like even today with the situation with Colombia, like it was 5 headlines back to back in a matter of 2 hours. And that is how like news is going to be moving for the next couple of years.
I think that's where it comes down to having that foundational knowledge, which I know Kenny and I have had this conversation many times together and on our platforms to our supporters, is that there's such a lacking of foundational knowledge of how this stuff works. That is such a problem, because all the attention that was given to Doge and Elon Musk making lists of federal employees, I said, they ain't gonna make that but a glorified rename something in the White House, because that's not how this works. He ain't got no funding, no appropriations, not how agencies work. Lo and behold, he's an IT guy now. That's all it is. If people weren't paying attention, they changed the U.S. Design Service to Doge, and they do IT. So he's not going to call you to fire you. He's going to call you to ask if you turned your computer off and then back on again. And like everybody, and I said this before, but I was like, there's an off-color joke in there somewhere about Vivek Ramaswamy as the Indian guy getting booted out of the IT office, but whatever.
The very first person.
First person. Just
he broke the record.
Woo, that was quick.
That turnover time was quick, wasn't it?
It was so quick, but I'm saying everybody was like freaking out, Doge. And I'm like, if you know how things work, right, there's a way to take in the news without, catastrophizing
it all.
Yeah.
But I think you're actually naming like the thing that's there, right? And what I like now, I work in like the higher ed space. And so it's like interesting because the ways in which people are interpreting information, it's actually becoming a lot more difficult for a lot of young people because one, literacy rates are at a record low, but then on top of that, people are changing the ways in which their relationship exists with traditional media versus this newer and more independent media, which comes with, TikTok, content creators, influencers. And so even as we are getting all of this stuff, Kevin, you also lead into the space of where I'm like, oh, I go to Kevin or Phil Lewis now. Where am I going to catch my news today?
I go to Kevin all the time. So
and that's what it is.
You.
And so it is that moment of like adding that capacity building, which is like where I think like even my role as an educator is like, how do I build capacity for people to interrogate news in a way that's responsible more and more? And so if I'm thinking around like a solution to this, no, Kevin, we need what you are doing. And we also need to be able to train our communities that we have a quick, immediate circle around, or at least circle of influence around in order to strategize of like, oh, Kevin said this, and here's how we can also vet what this news looks like, but also how does this potentially impact you, or why should you be worried about it, or here's why you should be worried about it. As you
right. I appreciate the affirmation. I was really just curious, sort of what strategy you guys were going to be using and how you create your content and how you have these conversations. And I think I tell people often, or rather, someone asked me in one of these crazy posts, because there's so much happening. Like the White House is now posting mugshots on the official White House Instagram page. They started doing that today. Like they're doing like detained by ICE in like big orange orange, bold letters. And so I've posted things and people are like, is this real? And I'm like, you're going to find yourself asking that a lot over the next couple of years. But yeah. All right. So my next question for you guys, as someone described them, Cheesecake Factory menus, Trump has signed a flurry of executive orders this week. Is there anyone in particular that stood out to you? And what is the experience? Sorry, what is the experience like of us talking about Trump during the campaign and all the things he said he was going to do versus the experience of him actually carrying these things out now?
I mean, it's reality. I mean, we kind of knew that it was going to happen. I mean, we've been, sounding the alarm for a year and a half about Project 2025. But I think the most alarming thing for me was the rollback of 1124-6, honestly, because we have so many Black people. And I know a lot of people say, well, they want to base things off of merit, but this president has no merit whatsoever. The only reason why he's in office is because of his money and his proximity. Obviously, his whiteness is the reason why he's in there, along with racism and misogyny. But he had no government experience. When you're looking at his resume versus any person who actually held that level of office, he has absolutely the bar is in hell. But when we're talking about these things, there's so many Black people who think that, oh, well, this isn't going to affect me because, affirmative action and DEI programs and this executive order, this only actually benefited white people. Yes. But also we have so many Black people that work for the federal government that are going to be affected by this. We have so many Black businesses that depend on these federal contracts. You're looking at private sectors right now. You're looking at the effects from the federal level actually happen in our day-to-day lives. You're seeing Walmart roll back their DEI programs. You're seeing Target roll back their DEI programs. This is affecting us. And the problem is when you have a leader in office using their bully pulpit to spread prejudice throughout the nation, this is what we're going to get. So it is affecting us.
Yeah. And there's so many things that people don't know historically were for Black folks or for Black and brown folks. Like the 14th Amendment made sure that the children of enslaved people were American citizens like that. Yeah. And people are just thinking about Mexicans, but it's like this goes so much deeper than that.
And that brings me to what concerns me the most, which, the DEI rollbacks. I remember saying that in a video. I was like, in practice, this is not really going to affect us in federal employment. In rhetoric, that's a whole other ball game. And I'm glad Kenny mentioned that because the rhetoric is what is so scary. Legally, both with rhetoric and in practice, what scares me the most is what they have made or what they put forth when it comes to immigration, pushing for mass deportation. It is very concerning that they're talking about assimilation in an executive order and evaluating assimilation. It is important for Black folks to remember that 10% of Black people in this country are immigrants. It is important to remember, like what you just said, Kevin, about the 14th Amendment and what it did for enslaved African Americans. This is getting into Nazi territory. It's not. They're Nazis. I will keep saying this bluntly, and they can get mad at me. These are Nazis. Nazis are at the doorstep, and the way they tried to play off what the South African princess was doing with throwing his little arm up and try to act like that wasn't a Nazi salute, like he's not the child of apartheid. And
I was so confused for a moment.
My mind immediately went to Tyler. I said, "How Tyler get in this?"
I have been calling him the South African princess because that's how he's rolling around like. And I'm like, look, y'all need to come get your little apartheid prince because here's the thing: they are trying to act like he's not tied to Nazis. I'm like, he is literally funding and promoting the ascension of Alternative for Deutschland, the AfD, the Nazi party in Germany. And to sit here and tell me that a guy funding Nazis and saying the Nazis should be in charge is not a Nazi is some heinous stuff. And this gets into the whole thing with immigration and how the AfD pushes for not just deporting people who are migrants or who are undocumented. They want to deport anybody who is not assimilated enough in Germany. And that's the same thing they're pushing over here in the US. So for all the people thinking I'm safe because I'm not an immigrant, I'm not Latino, whatever, I was born here, you're not safe because they can decide with the stroke of a pen that you are not American or you are not American enough.
Right.
I mean, I've had so many people in my comment section because they can't tell brown and Black people apart talking about one that I need to be deported tomorrow. And I'm just like, well, if you're going to deport me back to where my granddaddy was from on my mama's side because he's from France. I'm going to France. Like, you go ahead and send my ass back there. I guess that's where I'll go.
Yeah.
But my black ass is from here. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, and they are still talking about deporting us. Like,
I don't know. Look, this is what Jasmine Crockett said in our interview. She said, "How can you send something back that was stolen?"
Say that. But I think that's the piece right there, is like that idea of like not being American enough. And it's also understanding like Black immigrants or Black presenting immigrants are the ones who are facing the most amount of like harm because of the intersection of being undocumented or being Black, right? Like, so that's also like the hyper thing that we got to worry about on that. But for me, as I'm thinking around the executive orders and the rollbacks, it's honestly particularly watching like different educational spaces who are supposed to create modes of access are actually having to roll back just in case like they are potentially like losing funding and stuff like that too, right? And so like even in my department, I'm like, oh, we got to be a little creative with our word. We got to talk about belonging. We can't talk about DEI no more. But that can take funding away for kids who are trying to get into college. When you think about first generation students, when you think around that, so that stuff is, as you're talking about the other pieces, I'm like, actually in the locus of the work that I do is actually in college access. And so watching like a lot of my students are currently just like, yo, I don't have this. I don't know my rights in this moment. I don't know if I'm going to be able to continue on. I don't know what this means for stability if I go home, because I am nervous, particularly around the immigration piece. But now, am I going to lose money here, or will I be able to have the same college experience that y'all may have had before? And so I think those are the other pieces that we got to worry about, is like from a humane standpoint, people may dehumanize others, but if you can't see humanity in children, I was like, we're rotten to the core at this point, right? And so these are the other things that I've been thinking around a lot of the time in terms of like what these policies mean, but also the emotional impact that it's going to have to devastate others as well.
Yeah.
And if you were an immigrant who thought your money or your good job was going to protect you, I just want you to know that there were ICE agents at the elementary school in my neighborhood, and this ain't no cheap neighborhood. And it's a neighborhood of professionals. They're coming for you too. So if you thought, oh, I'm going to support Trump and my money was going to protect me, and my abuelita who's overstayed her visa is going to be able to stay in my house, they're going to come snatch you up too. Right. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people are going to figure out the hard way in a good minute, because they want to play one of the good ones. I'm one of the good ones. I'm safe. I voted for him. And that has been very frustrating. Like, it is, I want to tell those people to, like, for real, kick rocks. But I know that in order to fight for everybody's right and to fight against ICE and deportation as a whole, I got to fight for these jerks too. And it drives me nuts. But I hope they figure it out. Like, there's nothing that's going to protect you from white supremacy. You're not going to, Vivek Ramaswamy had to learn, and I still don't think he learned the lesson. You were not going to inch your way into white supremacy.
He's running for governor of Ohio, which is insane. I want to get y'all's reaction to this video of Jesse Waters on Fox News defending Elon Musk and his wave.
Well, that's just, Elon's thing, to grab your heart with one hand and then shoot it out in the sky. You're asking for it. You're asking for it. Maybe he's just not very well coordinated. I don't know.
Okay, Jesse Waters can go to hell always, every day, to the ends of the earth.
But what do we think about this?
This is a hell of a damn stretch. When the hell did your heart be damn near next to your shoulder?
What do you guys make of the way that the right is suddenly bending over backwards to excuse this and blame it on Asperger's, blame it on him being excited? Like, he did it 3 times. And then I don't have the video, but did you guys see his speaking engagement with the ADF in Germany? He spoke to them and he was on a conference call and his mic was on and he could hear the audience because he reacted to the sound of them applauding for him. But he was like trying to set up a joke, and Elon Musk is really not he's very awkward. So you could tell he was trying to get to a joke. And he asked the audience, he said, I can't really hear you. The sound isn't working. Can you guys like put your arms up or something? And I'm like, to a room of Germans.
Yeah, he's trash. I love how they brought up Asperger's. I'm like, thank you for walking right into the point. The doctor who, murdered children who were too autistic, who was a Nazi doctor. Of course, you want to still use that term that is outdated in the DSM-5 for a reason, and outdated in any sort of, like, that's why it's autism spectrum disorder, right? But yeah, they're bending over backwards, I think, because they're spineless, and a combination of that, as well as they know that this party has dirt on them. And I feel the same way about some other politicians on the other side of the aisle, because I'm trying to figure out why people are voting the way they're voting on things, including with the Lake and Riley Act, which was the most insane thing I've seen coming from Democrats supporting that, and the confirmation of that heifer in the Department of Homeland Security today, who said that 13-year-olds should carry their rapist babies to term. So I feel like there's a lot of people. Did you miss that today, Kevin?
Yeah.
You saw that? Yeah. So, because there was so much coming out today. But I think that there's a lot of white people who have some power and some influence and some professional status who got some skeletons in their closet, and now they're bending over backwards. I really do. You know, you can call me a conspiracy theorist or whatever, but the way white men move in this country, it wouldn't surprise me to know that Jesse Waters probably got some skeletons in his closet, and he's trying to play ball with some people before they come out.
Well, that's really what the reality is. Like, yes, that reaction is like terrible because why? Because they're going to continue to move around this idea of like, oh, I can keep moving the goalposts in terms of white men and in terms of like what they are doing in this administration more and more. Because the more I can move that goalpost, they also understand that I think also in our social climate, people are kind of over like the political correctness. We're beyond the era of decency, or at least the illusion of decency. People want to be able to move as indecently as possible now. And people find that to be powerful, right? Like, that's why we got a Trump back in office, is because people want to be the villain in some capacity. They want to have their own, they want to be individualist in how they approach everything. And so when we are looking at what they're doing on the news, it's just an extension of what is ultimately happening right now. We see what Trump is doing, turning this into nationalist, but he's extending America to be a white man who has never been checked. And that's how America has been moving. And that's what I am seeing more and more of, especially with the, we only need white people here. It needs to be a meritocracy. It has to be blah, 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 blah. He's going by, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. And that's the only way that we can prove this. But in reality, what he does not know is that he's really shooting poor white folks in the foot, middle-class white folks in the foot. But they won't realize that until they also realize that they're being negatively impacted, which they're still white. So they might just be like, at least I'm not one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kenny, any
It's
thoughts?
unfortunate that a lot of people have that, you know, ideology that, you know, I might be poor, but at least this hurts people of color more. I mean, that's just crazy. But I have no disagreements.
What I thought was really interesting, or I guess something that I just noticed, is yesterday I made a post about how Donald Trump has basically halted all foreign aid programs and to give the administration time to review where money is going and decide what programs they want to keep and which ones they want to cut. And that includes a foreign aid program that distributes HIV medications to people around the world. Many people in Africa depend on that medication, and they will run out of funding if it takes the full 180 days for them to review this. Playing with people's health that way is really scary. And I've noticed what I think Marquise mentioned, which was this idea of like nationalism, where it's like America, because people were like, well, why should we worry about it? And I'm like, I wish that we could stop looking at politics as like instant gratification. Like, what's going to happen right now? Oh, we're going to save money right now. First of all, we're not saving shit. We could just stop spending so much on police. But HIV affects the world, and the way that we let it fester and allow HIV to, you know, become what's what I'm looking for modern medicine to not be able to combat it anymore is what's going to happen. And that's how people start dying again. So I just thought that was, you know, really interesting, the way that people are looking at this. I think even people on this side are ingesting that like America first rhetoric without really realizing it, because I had to explain to a couple of people like, well, this is how public health works. It kind of
But when have Republicans ever put America first? Even when it comes to these things that they're rolling back, like for AIDS prevention and trying to stop those things, they tried to literally cut back in 2023 in one of the budgets they introduced. They tried to cut back funding for wine and right programs, trying to cut funding for PrEP. So this isn't anything new. They have never given anything to the American people. Now they want to give more tax cuts to the rich. They're not doing anything for the American people. So when is it going to ever be America first?
And people were saying that Tim Walz was crazy because he gave every kid in school free lunch.
Yeah, they don't. Well, we said they don't. Children are the most vulnerable and abused demographic in this country and around the world. They are the most at risk. And like we said, when you start not caring about children, I mean, we're below hell at that point. They don't understand public health. And as a public health lawyer, it's the most infuriating thing to me of trying to explain to people. I mean, they thought that they're still walking around COVID as a hoax and swallowing horse paste and you know, bleach and stuff.
Bleach,
like,
right?
I'm just sitting here like, y'all will believe everything but some facts and some science. And it's very hard to get people out of that. I think part of why people are so vulnerable to that rhetoric is because having to confront a more complex reality scares them. And they don't like to confront that there's something going on in the world that is beyond their knowledge and their capacity to understand. And that's that whole issue with Dunning-Kruger. They cannot fathom a world, especially white men, in which they don't understand and know everything. And that's why they always say conspiracy theories are easy to believe when you don't know how anything works.
Yeah. And something that was pointed, sorry, I'm a little off topic. I'm a little off the agenda. I'll go back to topics in a second. But something that was pointed out to me this week was the way that, and I hadn't noticed it honestly, but paying attention to the language of Trump's executive orders, it's pretty clear that they are essentially bastardizing the civil rights movement and taking the work of civil rights activists and the progress that was made for civil rights and for reaching for a world where there's racial justice and racial equity and equality. They are now saying, well, this is unfair to white people. This goes against the Civil Rights Act because white people feel left out.
This is what happens when you're able to co-opt the language, right? Like, this is the reality. So when you allow language to go into the public imagination, people can bastardize it however they feel, right? People don't know the full idea of what feminism means, but they're just like, I'm a girl boss, I can do this. This is what this means, right? But that's not the full length of what that is. And so it is also like, to your point, is y'all were just complaining that black and brown people were using this language and it's not fair, but y'all use the same language with legacy admissions. Y'all use the same language with all of these other pieces. But it's interesting because now it feels like they're trying to do an overcorrection because they're also able to play into this white fear that they are no longer going to be the majority and they are not going to have the power. And what are they going to do to clamor onto as much power as possible? They're going to utilize language that points the blame. Hey, you don't have this because those black people are taking your jobs. You don't have this because those immigrants are taking your job. You don't have this and you can't say what you want anymore because you can't talk to the LGBTQ plus community anymore. Right? There are so many things that they have been at play, which is why I continue to say we're in the era of indecency because people actually don't want to be politically correct anymore. People don't want to have empathy for their neighbors anymore because the world is so much more like digitized. And so in this, we're also just noticing like, oh, it's easy to put the blame on everybody else. But what happens? My theory is like white people are going to start crashing out when they realize in 2027, oh, you actually are not qualified to do this job.
Yeah.
What happens when that happens? But we know what happens to a white person denied. They get violent. And so that's the thing that we also have to worry about is like their crash out also means harm towards us. And how do we begin to protect ourselves in that moment? And so I was like, his language is very particular. His language is very nationalistic. And it actually reminded me of what was going on in the Dominican Republic for a little bit, where they were like, if you're not showing enough pride here, we're sending you over to the other area, or we're going to take this away, or we're going to kill you. And so these are the things I think around contextually in the world, but also what this means for us right now means if it's not white, you probably didn't work hard to get it. But what happens when you realize that black people and brown people are going to like outperform you? What happens in that moment?
Speaking of angry white men, I want your reaction to this video.
By pardoning not some of the rioters, but all of them, political violence in this country just became mainstream. It is now a fact of life in America.
This was a political hoax. And you know what? Those people, and I'm not saying in every single case, but there was a lot of patriotism with those people.
Okay, president of law and order, he decides to go.
It is a political hoax. All right, so Trump this week, as soon as he got into office, said that he plans to investigate President Biden's preemptive pardons that he signed before leaving office because he is, as Kenny just said, the president of, quote, law and order. But he also pardoned 1,500 more than 1,500 insurrectionists and got 211 people released from prison, including a dark web anarchist who trafficked drugs and weapons. Will this matter?
Yeah, it is going to matter because these people are already shown that they are loyal to Donald Trump and they're willing to do anything at this point for this man. So I'm kind of concerned for elected leaders. Anytime somebody wants to speak out against this person, he said that he wants to reign with an iron fist. He wants to be a dictator day one. He has his army.
Right. And he's moving as if he was a deified character as well. And so he survived this gunshot. He survived the attempted assassination. He was able to now come back, and he, even in his rhetoric, it was very much coded with like religious use. And so it's just like, oh, you think that you were here, this presidency is in your purpose and you're supposed to do something. So he has all the makings to have a good cult following, which means that that's more dangerous for us on the ground as well, because they're going to defend anything he does. And now they can associate my freedom is now with Trump. And so that's the dangerous part.
And I want Elizabeth's thoughts, but I just want to say, and with that, he's bringing them along with him because for some reason, this man is still holding rallies. And he brought these men on stage in Arizona this week. Like, and what I think is really interesting, and I guess, Elizabeth, this is like a specific question. What are your thoughts around the way that Donald Trump basically humiliated several people in his administration, including J.D. Vance, who said Donald Trump will not pardon people who were physically aggressive to police officers, and then Donald Trump was immediately pardoned them after people online were upset with him for saying that?
Well, first and foremost, I'm really bothered by the religious side of all of this because I don't think the Messiah is coming like a bleached booty hole. But that aside, I think the problem with Trump doing what he did is that his own party, they're not learning a lesson. You can't wrangle this man in. They seem to keep thinking they're going to rein him in and get him to do what they want to do and this, that, and the third. I think some of them, though, are just, I mean, we know J.D. Vance is weak as water and a liar, straight up. I mean, you threw your own children, your brown babies, to the wolves when they were like making death threats at your kids and your wife. That is a weak man. Like, for people to sit here and want to talk about genders and determine other people's gender identity, but you can't fit your own definition of masculinity, go to hell. But I think these people are liars. And I think that they just
clock
I mean,
it.
it's so weak. They're liars. They're liars. I mean, that's what it is. I think he was lying when he said it. He knew he was lying when he said it because he was just trying to, act like he had some sense of any kind of power as the vice president. Never mind that he photoshopped himself next to Trump in a 1950s housewife photo. So I think he knows that he's not the one in charge here. But they're kidding themselves. They're lying to the public. And they still have this illusion that they're going to somehow use Trump to elevate their own power rather than him just discarding them or stepping all over them when he's done with them. I mean, his last vice president, he said he should have been hanged. I don't even know how you willingly try to go in that job, especially with a wife and children who have an immigrant background and are minorities. JD Vance is a whole anomaly to me because I just can't figure out why do you hate your children that much? I don't know.
Yeah.
That went off the rails a little bit, but that's my answer.
No, it's just that Republicans want to be in the proximity of Donald Trump because he says all the things that they've only alluded to. They've never been able to have the level of privilege that Donald Trump has had, level of garnering this amount of tension and this cult following. They don't know what to do with this unchecked power, which is the reason why even during the primaries, Republicans didn't steer away from Donald Trump and his rhetoric. They just made excuses for it because they want that power. They want his supporters. And they think that somehow they're going to be able to inherit these supporters if he ever steps down of office. But they're never going to be able to get this cult following that he has.
And I do think that during the primary, a lot of Republicans were waiting in the wings to see what that DeSantis v. Trump situation was going to be like. I think a lot of Republicans were like, can someone actually challenge, like, can someone harness what he has? No one can do what he does. It's impossible. And I think, but what's crazy is I don't think any of them are scared of him, but they just want to appease him. Like, I don't think anyone in DC is actually afraid of Donald Trump as much as it is that they want, like, Kenny said, all the benefits that come with being aligned with him.
I do think they're scared of him. And it goes back to what I said earlier about skeletons in the closet. And you know what? If you have a guy who has access to all your Twitter stuff, your personal DMs, everything else, you've got all these people, I mean, they're not smart. We know that they send things and share things and what they do over the internet, thinking that nobody's ever going to see it. And now he has Meta in his pocket. He's got Twitter in his pocket. He's got TikTok in his pocket. They're going to get your WhatsApp messages. They're going to get your Facebook Messenger. Those nudes you sent to that mistress round the way, they're going to scoop that up. Like, I really do believe this. And I think that this is on the top of a lot of people's minds. Some of them, I think, aren't scared and they just want some more power, or they think, this isn't that big of a deal, or it just doesn't affect me, so I don't care. But I think there's a lot of people in Washington who got some secrets. And now they've got the tech oligarchy going, and they're gonna scoop secrets up.
That is
our secrets. Child, didn't the person who was running for North Carolina, he got caught on trans websites looking at Ebony porn. Yeah.
But that is our next topic, the brolarchy, as people are calling it. But before we get there, I did just want to ask, Rachel Maddow was on Pod Save America today on their Sunday show. And she said something that I thought was interesting and I want your opinion on, which was she hopes that shame can pull some Republicans to the right place. And she said not because of humanity or decency, but she wonders if shaming Republicans will cause them enough embarrassment because eventually they have to run for something and they have to talk to their constituents. And I am of the belief that I do think there's a part of me, beside the harm that will befall people, that is befalling people right now, there's a part of me that's like, I'm waiting for these people to wake up. Like, eggs are still $13, guys, and coffee is going to cost $25, a bag next week, and you're not gonna be able to afford flowers for Valentine's Day. So I'm waiting for Trump voters to wake up, and eventually the Republicans who are up his ass are gonna have to answer to those people. So will shaming them and being like, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, or you're not sticking by your word, will that work, or is the GOP completely lost?
No,
I don't think it's gonna work.
That's not gonna work. I'm sorry. You have more hope than we do, Kevin. But I really don't think.
No, I'm
that
saying
was Rachel Maddow. I don't have hope either.
No, I'm saying anyway, but I don't have any hope that they're gonna change. These people are lost. The only thing we can do is galvanize the people who decided to sit on the damn couch, and that's all we can do. We have to overwhelm them at the polls. That's the only way that we're gonna be able to do this.
So they're gonna be shocked when. Yeah. I think they're going to be shocked when more Luigi starts showing up at their doorstep. And I'm not condoning, recommending anybody do that in any way, but we see what happens. And Inglorious Bastards, it exists. I'm just letting people know. People going to talk about these white boys on the left is crazy because they even come at me in my comment section. Okay. Yeah. And I'm waiting for them to start talking about some Nazi scalps or something. And I keep saying I'm going to sit here and mind my black business. Because when I saw that privileged white boy from Maryland shoot that privileged white CEO, I said, "Oh, this is a shift right here." So I do think that they're going to see the decades of violence that they have injected into white American males. I do think they're going to see some backlash there, especially when you see the pardoning of other white violent American males, and I think that might be the civil war that nobody thought was going to happen, but it might be between these white men in this country.
Look, I just don't trust anybody that I don't believe has a conscience, and I don't believe white people have a conscience in this space right now. Because the fact of the matter is, they're going to continue to eat themselves at the foot. But in that, I'm not going to have hope for them to suddenly change their leaf or whatever, turn a new leaf, because the reality is I don't have the privilege to wait on there. I don't have the privilege of hoping for that. We don't have the privilege of hoping for that. What I do know is the stuff that I have in my locus control, but what I am not going to be waiting on are people who do not have our livelihood and our humanity in mind when they are making these decisions. So I'm going to be like, y'all going to keep doing what you do. I'm going to be mindful because I got to know how y'all are moving. But in reality, it's good that Rachel can want to see some hope in that, but that shout out to whiteness for that, but no, not for my black behind.
I remember saying that with the Luigi thing. I said, I'm gonna just mind my black business on this one. And people got mad that I didn't want to hero worship this dude. I said, I'm not hero worshiping no white dude
Do you know what
who
is?
picked up a gun and shot somebody? That's basic white dude behavior.
You know what is insane? That was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Time is moving too slow for me.
That doesn't make sense.
That's only 6 weeks
My brain
ago.
don't compute.
Luigi's only taken like 6 showers in prison so far. Like, that is crazy. So I did want to talk about what Democrats should do next. Very quickly, I don't want to keep you guys too long. What are our feelings about the broligarchy and having all of those tech CEOs in seats? Because, you know, famous and rich people come to inaugurations all the time, but these tech CEO and founders were sitting in the seats that are usually reserved for members of Congress. They were sitting right next to Donald Trump. What are our feelings about that, and what impact do we think that that's going to have on policy for the next couple of years?
I'm not surprised.
No.
I mean, just there was no shock there. The number of people who were like, not Shu, not the millionaire TikTok CEO, not our TikTok daddy that we were just all over some months ago. Yes, him too. Yes. Like, there was no surprise. And I think, again, I think we're going to see a lot of breaching of privacy. That's what I think is going to end up happening. That's what I foresee with that.
Yeah, I definitely think it's we should be actually very concerned with what tech is going to be looking like and how social media is actually going to be operating, because right now we are at the most vulnerable opportunity to be fed that slow drip of this rhetoric, the slow drip of what this means, how they can position stuff. The reality is Trump is a great political thespian. He knows how to put on some theater. He knows how to market, and people are going to eat that up a lot of the time. And so my biggest concern is when they have control and can dictate the algorithm, when they're able to control what is being censored and what is not, because they're taking anything that says free the people, that is off. That is taking it off of everything, right? And so even seeing that idea of censorship, I'm like, y'all actually don't care about the Constitution. Y'all don't care about decency. You don't care of any of the values that America was founded on, right? Well, they do care about some of them, a lot of them, but the Constitution, right? But I think that piece is actually really interesting to see, because besides that, there were also senators in overflow rooms, right? There were actual politicians in overflow rooms. So what does that signal to you as an observer of media or a consumer of media? That means that money and power is the only thing that's ever going to speak, not the actual policy of it all. And so what I'm going to track to is like, oh, Elon Musk knows what he's talking about. Oh, Mark Zuckerberg knows what he's talking about. Oh, Trump knows what he's talking about. Because remember, Trump is still a symbol of wealth and power to a lot of the older American minds. And so what does this mean is that people are going to be attracted to that. So that's what they're going to think political power actually looks like versus what it should be.
I mean, none of this is, we're talking about what will be, what has already been. They've already been manipulating us using social media for the longest. I mean, me and Elizabeth already know most of our content was hidden in the algorithm throughout
It's
this
giving shadow banned.
It's been hell. Trying to break through. So it wasn't a surprise to me that Show was on some show ass shit doing all those things. So that didn't surprise me. Okay. But
I gave up on that app. I have not been on TikTok, and people were telling me that like it's such a great like source for organizing.
When you
and
find
I'm
them,
like every video that I have on TikTok is literally just full of death threats. TikTok is
there's no organizing. That's the laziest people I've ever seen in my life. I ain't never seen those people show up. Not a thing, not nothing. That is the laziest.
Activists ain't about that life.
Ooh, me and Kenny got thoughts on that we ain't even gonna get into. But I'll just say, no.
Yeah.
To the point though, when it comes to like social media, what I would like to see, to answer your question from Democrats, is they need to actually invest in creating a platform. They need to invest into actually investing in influencers to put out the information. They need a social media, a rapid response team. They need to be able to break down disinformation as it comes out, and they need to get ahead of the story, because Republicans, they only have like 1 or 2 playbooks. That's it. They're very predictable when it comes to how they're going to frame certain things. And instead of shying away on certain issues, they need to learn how to lean into them. When it comes to blackness, when it comes to wokeness, when it comes to trans issues, LGBT issues, they need to lean into them and educate while also combating the misinformation. The problem with people concerned about trans rights or concerned about affirmative care, knowing that nobody's attacking children when it comes to trans youth. Nobody's doing any of that. And when we're talking about affirmative care is just an affirmation, just an acknowledgement of one's existence that might stop somebody from harming themselves. When we're talking about affirmative care, it comes in so many different forms and shapes. And that's when we have to start talking about humanizing these communities and actually energizing the base rather than shying away from them.
Well, here's my so we'll jump into what Democrats should do. And my issue with Democrats last year, and Kenny, you and I had a lot of disagreements, and I had a lot of disagreements with a lot of people. And people told me that I was like, working against Kamala Harris because I had the audacity to like question moves. That what I told people at the end of the day was like Kamala Harris was the candidate that I wanted to win, was the candidate that I voted for. I canvassed for her, but the decisions that were being made by the campaign were not being made by one woman. They were not all Kamala Harris's decisions. So like when I was sharing my criticisms, they were criticisms of the Democrats, plural, capital D. But like Democrats are already off to a wrong foot because they voted for Connolly to be the top Democrat in the oversight committee. And Donald Trump broke the law the other day by firing 17 inspector general. And Jerry Connolly has not been on TV. And AOC has been on TV every day. And that is what Democrats need to be doing, is speaking truth to power and letting people know what's going on. I just think that Democrats are just... And
they're trying to uphold the moral superiority, right?
Decency politics.
Decency. They're trying to uphold some decency that doesn't exist.
Decency is dead. Okay, we elected somebody who's literally a convicted felon. So
seeing Democrats I'm sorry, but Biden being there, Harris being there, of course, they are transitioning power. But like Amy Klobuchar tried to like insert a joke in her remarks during the inauguration, and it was like
inauguration?
I did.
Why?
But like Amy Klobuchar was like, she tried to like get a little like joke in there, and I'm like, you guys are not even pretending that this is a somber moment. You told us that this man was the next Hitler, and you're all clapping along and acting fine. And so at this point, I'm like, I don't even trust y'all. Like even Obama laughing at the funeral, I'm like, I just don't understand. Y'all told us that he was the end of the world.
But notice who wasn't laughing, and notice who didn't show up. A couple of black women. And that's the thing
shout
that
out
gets
to
me,
Michelle.
because one thing that I kept hearing is Democratic messaging is bad. Democratic messaging is bad. And yeah, you know what? I don't like the messaging all the time, but I want to know what makes black women so superior and smarter than everybody else then, because why did we understand the message so easily? So I think that that's a cop-out. I think that's a very easy cop-out to say that it's just the messaging. We have an education issue. As Marquise said, illiteracy is at an all-time high. We have allowed Republicans to dismantle the education system in this country, to take over with crazy rhetoric, to put disinformation out there left, right, and center. And so it's not just about messaging about a campaign. It's about actually fighting against the policies and the laws that are causing the harm. And I'm going to post a clip today because I did a DNC chair forum where I interviewed the candidates of the DNC chair who are running for DNC chair. The vote will take place on February 1st. It's coming up. And it's a clip with Dr. Quintessa Hathaway, who was the only black person and the only black woman who was running for DNC chair. And she has been the only person who has said this point to me. She said, I looked at the lawsuits when it came to it. Like I worked on lawsuits when it came to fighting against Republicans with gerrymandering, everything they were doing. And the RNC was always on these lawsuits and the DNC wasn't on one. Why does the DNC not have an army of attorneys with all their money and are going in and filing lawsuits at every damn turn? And I love that she brought that point up, which I think was key. And I think a lot of people glossed over it. There were people in the comments just jumping all over Marianne Williamson, she ain't worth a damn. But anyway, people glossed over that point. And I think that's so important. And it's part of the standing up. It's what you just said, Kevin. They need to stand up against this firing of the inspector generals, which of course the attorneys representing them had to come in and be like, you can try it if you want to. They had to be the ones to step in. But it should be the Democrats taking charge and going, we'll see you in court, motherfucker.
Right.
I'm sorry. I don't know if this on here. I've been talking crazy. Exactly. I'm sorry.
No,
it should be everyone. Like the reason why 18 lawsuits were filed within the first 6 hours of Trump's inauguration was because the ACLU has been spending months They have been putting the time and the effort into everything that Trump promised he was going to do. They're like, all right, better draft a lawsuit. And as soon as it happened, they were able to file those lawsuits.
But I think that's the piece right there, right? Because the reality is, one, just real quick, Kenny, if you ever heard of Ground News, I think, and this is just for anybody who's listening, Ground News, I think, is a very good site to just like, I know there's a paywall and stuff like that, but it's a great way to like engage in media that can tell you like, here's where your biases may be. Here's some stuff that you could read. Here's a good middle ground situation. Again, that's no plug for Ground News, but I think it is a good media source that can kind of like be a little bit more even keel. And the other piece, again, thinking around like media and how the Democrats should be moving, I think they need to be able to tell more stories plainly. Because what I do think that the Democrats were not able to do was have a very clear message with a story behind it. The reality is most people actually blindly, you can use the thing. They don't like Obamacare, but they love the Affordable Care Act. There's a very clear thing that people don't understand. And right. And so even in that in itself, people like a compelling story. The sad thing that Trump was able to do that resonated with people was being like, oh, y'all are really upset about this not having enough money. I gave you a check though, right? And guess what the Democrats did not do for you? But I did this thing. So you can put your blame to them, right? So a lot of people can sit there and vote in the space of for Trump, but not actually. But I say America's a much more emotional human than they are logical for most Americans. And so what can you do to make me feel better? What is that story attached to this? Are there actually human things that we're feeling? Some of the things that they passed within Biden's administration, it didn't do nothing for me here in Philly. Yeah, there are some things that did stuff for me here in Philly. But what it did for my family down south, they were impacted so much more because it allowed them to have more access points. But we're not hearing those stories. We're not hearing those wins because it's not always in your face in a way that feels digestible because we're speaking in a language that's above them. What Trump can do is speak at a 3rd grade reading level. What Trump can do is speak at a 4th grade reading level, which is where a lot of people are able to connect in a different kind of way. So what I hope Democrats were to do is being like, yeah, all these things that you're feeling, Trump did that. This Republican voted for this. This is why you don't have this. Here's what's going on here. Because when you're able to do that, don't do it in a tit for tat kind of sense. Well, maybe you got to, but do it in a way where you're able to connect my very real emotion that I'm feeling now with a moment that I can have a quick solution. And here's what my long-term solution is and how that can add to it. And so if Democrats were smart, point out everything that you don't like, them eggs that you talk about paying for, that's Republicans. Now coffee running it up, that's Republicans. That's how you got to start moving, because I think that will make things a lot clearer because so many people don't know.
But I think
the problem is they do. Okay, so I'm not going to say they don't. Say they do use their platforms to put this information out there. Otherwise, we wouldn't know about it. The problem is people aren't looking for it, which is why Democrats need to up their game. If they have a platform, they need to start doing podcasts. I did an interview with Jasmine Crocker. She was thinking about starting up a podcast. They have to meet the people where they are and bring them in.
The fact that Ted Cruz has spent more time podcasting over the last 2 years than voting is insane. Ted Cruz is a professional podcaster.
They got to get out there.
They got to put it out there. They got to meet the people where they are. It's not like they're not saying it, but people aren't looking for the information. Part of using my platform, I've always said, rather than asking questions, how about looking for answers? And I put the answers out there. I remember so many people used to tell me, well, this doesn't exist. This isn't happening. And I'm like, okay, here's a link. Click on it.
Here's my biggest issue with the Biden administration in general. Was, and this is one, again, because of civility and Biden having served the country for 50 years, Biden needed to do victory laps. Donald Trump won, and within 3 days of his inauguration was at a rally. Now we can argue that like we shouldn't have to do it, we should focus on policy, but like you guys are right. Americans, like George Bush lied. These kids were left behind. Like, we need to be in people's faces constantly telling them what we've done, because as much as we can say Republicans have done this wrong, or Republicans are falling behind on this, if you are not flexing all the time what you've accomplished, people's response is still going to be, well, what did Biden do? And it's like, oh my God, all right, well, let me find you the fucking list again, because he's not doing it. But like, Democrats should be, and that's what they should be doing for the next 2 years, because there are still good Democrats in office across the country who are accomplishing things, who should be out there telling people what it is that they're getting done.
They need to learn how to answer the damn question. That is the biggest thing. And that's what I'm thinking about with Marquise, what you just said. And I told them when I did and they still couldn't really adhere to it all the way. But when I did the DNC chair debate, I said,
yes
if I have a
or no
question, start with yes or no. They don't know how to do it. Tim Walz, when JD Vance was saying there, he should have went around and said, no, he didn't. Why are you lying? And you said he was Hitler. You changed your mind? How much is he paying you, JD Vance, for you to... Did he threaten your wife and children because you said he was Hitler and now you're going to be his VP? What happened behind closed doors? They got to get down and dirty because that is what the average person wants to see. You can't do this whole, like, even when they do answer things and say, like, here's policy, it's not just about talking about it on a level that people understand or breaking it down in that level. It's also responding. And they don't know how to respond a lot of times. And I'm like, you got to answer the damn question. If they say Donald Trump said that he was going to lower the egg prices, you don't start off with, well, here's what's going on. No, the hell he won't. Let me tell you why he won't. Like, just take this shit.
They just make it simplistic. Like, they're talking over people's heads. That's the problem.
Yeah,
it's not even just talking over people's heads. Like even somebody, I feel like we're a very intelligent group of people. Sometimes I can't find the damn answer in what they're saying. You're talking around everything, but you're not answering the question. And I feel like I just want to do. Look, DNC Democrats, if y'all are watching this, somebody sees this. If you need somebody to train you on how to answer some questions, I got you. I will do that for you. Okay. I used to be an associate justice on the moot court board in law school. If I can help those students, I sure can help your ass. Come on now.
I just want to say his name is James Donald Bowman. I will not be calling that man by his chosen name. You don't respect trans people. I don't respect you. His name is not JD Vance. His name is James Donald Bowman.
Lash just be killing me. Lash just be killing me and not softly. I need her to go.
President Bowman, please don't do that. Please. And to everyone who keeps saying they hope that Donald Trump doesn't make it 4 years, please, I hope he does. Because I cannot deal with a JD Vance and a Mike Johnson VP.
I could deal with that because they're both very weak and dumb. And I feel like they can be bullied very easily.
I agree.
I really do. I actually would be okay with that. And people said, really, it's like, look how quickly he flip-flopped. That man, it was like... You can bully them. You can bully them for real. Trump's so delusional, you can't bully him because he don't even know. I don't even think he knows what's going on or what reality he's in.
No, he knows. He just wants it to be white America back in the 1950s again. That's what he wants.
So before I let y'all go, first of all, thank you for joining me for this. I really, really appreciate it. I kind of threw this together last minute, so thank you for your time. There are a lot of people commenting, and I'm sorry I don't live stream, so I've had a hard time trying to read the comments. Kenny, you got a lot of compliments on your Christmas tree. People said it's giving resistance. So
look, that Christmas tree ain't coming down until Jesus come back. You hear what I'm saying?
But before I let you guys go, I do want to end on a semi-positive note, which is, what is it that you are doing either for yourself or for your community, or what you recommend to people that is sort of either keeping you upbeat or fighting against the things that are going on? It can be political or not political. Me, for example, I have decided to paint my entire apartment, and every time that the news overwhelms me, I pick up a brush and start a new wall. So like for the next couple, I'm just going to be painting very slowly.
I like that. I'm redecorating too. I closed on a new house in December. I made the offer 2 days after the election, as Kenny knows, because I was like, man, should I run? My husband was like, nah, I got you. And I've been getting back into stand-up. I headlined last night. I got the crowd real good with the joke saying that I hope my husband's white, so I made a joke saying that when they repeal the 13th Amendment, I hope he buys me.
Oh God.
I just been making dark humor. I've been doing dark jokes, man. That's how I go.
The shock.
Well, hopefully he gets you free after he does, and walk around with your freedom papers.
That's what I've been doing.
Child.
My God.
Personally, I'm committed to my 10-10-10 rule first thing in the morning. So 10 minutes of stretching, 10 minutes of writing affirmations, 10 minutes of sipping my coffee. Your 10-10 rule, 10-10-10 rule can do whatever you want it to be, but that's how I like to spend my first 30 minutes of waking up before the rest of the world needs me. Community-wise, doing some political education, but I'm also using my podcast to create a lot of third spaces for people. So I'll do a series of workshops and fireside chats here in Philly as well. And so I just realized third space is going to be super needed within our community. So that's what I'm doing here down in Philly.
Hmm.
Yes.
I have been stress eating. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. This has
Ooh,
been
what you been eating?
Look, I've been eating all the trans fats, okay? Doing all the things.
Trans fat.
Sleeping in, okay, working, because a lot of people think that I do this as a full-time job, child. I work. But yeah, like gotta pay bills, gotta keep the lights on. I don't want to be out in my ass. You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You need to be in my house. I'm making chili dogs.
Well, okay. Are you right around the corner? Stop playing.
You can come over for dinner anytime.
I love it.
Marquise, Kevin, you are also welcome. If you ever come to DC, you are more than welcome.
I will be there soon.
I'll be there in a couple weeks.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Everyone who's watching, can y'all let them, or you know what, everyone, if you're watching this on YouTube, everyone who's here, their handles are in the YouTube video description. And if you don't follow me on Instagram at Here's Why Kevin for daily news updates, and I will be back next Sunday. Yeah, that's all. Thank you guys.
Thanks.
Take care.
Peace.